Our story takes us to the luxurious 5-star Jawa hotel in the city of Yunqing. Inside, a red-haired woman was enjoying a hot, relaxing shower. Meanwhile, a man with bad intentions grabs her clothes, saying he'll finally make her his. But suddenly, he's interrupted by a knock on the door as a food delivery had arrived. The guy then replies that he's on his way to get the order he placed, and to everyone's surprise, the person there was our protagonist, Yi Chen. The lover opens the door and is shocked to see the delivery guy, while the woman appears right behind him. The young woman, covered only by a towel, confusedly asks if he was the one who took her clothes. Shocked by the scene, Yi Chen ends up dropping the bag of food on the floor. Annoyed with the situation, the rich man starts to shout and insult our hero. Seeing the commotion, his wife shouts "Coney," which leaves the protagonist completely confused. The lover then mocks him, saying that her useless husband was actually a delivery guy. Yi Chen starts having flashbacks of how he cared for her for 3 years, and she never let him touch her. The young man then questions her about why, because he thought she was a woman with principles. She coldly replies that she cheated on him because her husband is just a useless food delivery guy. Right after, the woman introduces the other man as a young master, the head of a large company. She continues, saying that only a man like that is worthy of her, and not a poor man like her husband. The rich guy then tells Yi Chen to kneel and admit he was wrong to get 5 stars. The protagonist fills with rage, thinking how they can be so shameless just because they have money. Fang Qiu then tells the woman not to worry, and that they should just continue what they were doing. Full of rage, our protagonist grabs the guy and tells him to stop, while the lover screams out in pain. His wife steps in front of the rich guy, defending him, and even challenges her husband to hit her. And in a threatening tone, the woman says she'll call security if he doesn't leave. Disappointed with everything, our hero just stares at her and says her name, Wang Jiao. Then, Yi Chen remembers when his grandfather showed him a picture of his arranged bride. That had been the first time he saw the face of the woman he was going to marry. Back then, he thought she was beautiful and believed he would have a happy and peaceful life with her. But now he realizes it was all just a dream and hopes she won't regret it. The young woman laughs and says her only regret is having a useless husband as the young man leaves. Outside, the delivery guy gets on his scooter and prepares to leave that horrible place. Then, he receives a call from an unknown number and promptly answers. It was his master informing him that his 3-year training as the Wang family's son-in-law was over. And with that, his next training task would be in the large and competitive world of business. The man then reveals that he bought the Huaxin Group and appointed him as chairman, and Yi Chen agrees. Right after, he asks if they should bring the young woman into the family, but the young man says she is not worthy. Then our hero speeds off on his scooter with a new goal and a new life ahead of him. Later, around 8 o'clock at night, Wang Jiao arrives home and opens the door. She sees her husband packing his bags and asks if he's running away over a little thing. The woman adds that since he lives in her house for free, he has to put up with everything quietly. Yi Chen explodes and says that for 3 years, he endured the humiliations from her and her entire family. He shouts that he put up with it all because he cared about her, but from now on, he doesn't want this life anymore. With a determined expression, the young man looks at Wang Jiao and finally asks for a divorce. The woman gets furious and blames him for being useless, warning that he will lose the apartment and the luxury car. With a smirk, our hero replies that he doesn't need any of that and can give it all up. Annoyed, she agrees to the separation and complains about his grandfather for making her marry a worthless man. Then she boasts about her rich family, and he suggests they finalize the divorce the next morning. The young woman refuses because it's her grandmother's 80th birthday, and she needs to talk to her family first. The protagonist then tells her to sort it out quickly, as he will be waiting for her call. As he leaves, she shouts that he will regret it and will come crawling back to her in a few days. Outside in the rain, the young man's phone rings, and someone tells him the car is waiting for him. At that moment, a luxury car pulls up right in front of him as if it had been waiting for him to come out. In fact, an entire fleet of Rolls-Royces was there, and several men in suits greet him as young master. One of his subordinates offers an umbrella, but Yi Chen refuses the protective item. The young master says that letting the rain fall on him will help clear his thoughts. Carefully, one of his employees places an overcoat over his shoulders to protect him from the cold. With a determined and renewed look, our hero gives the order for all of them to leave. The caravan of expensive cars begins to move down the wet street, impressing everyone nearby. People on the sidewalk are confused about what's happening with so many cars of that brand. From upstairs, his ex-wife hears the noise and wonders if someone very important has shown up. Inside one of the vehicles, the protagonist looks ahead with a serious expression, focused on the future. The world knows of rich families, but the most mysterious of all is the Yi family, with billions in assets. Arriving at a heliport, one of the men guides him into a waiting helicopter. Since the age of 3, the family's heirs undergo a strict and different education from others. And to test each one's character, the family elders subject them to special trials. In a flashback, we see his grandfather explaining the mission to marry into a second-class family. Back then, the young man willingly accepted the test because he was already interested in the young woman. But now, with a tear on his face, he understands that it's all over and he is welcomed back. Back in his rightful place, the protagonist returns to his true home and family. The next morning, at Jiao's grandmother's birthday party, everyone congratulates her. The matriarch of the Wang family then notices Yi Chen's absence and asks where he is. The ex-wife blatantly lies, saying her husband probably went to work. Two relatives start mocking the protagonist for being a food delivery guy and embarrassing them. Furious with the lack of respect, the old woman orders her granddaughter to bring the young man there immediately. With no way out, the young woman decides to reveal to everyone that the two of them are getting a divorce. The grandmother shouts that the marriage was arranged by her grandfather and asks who gave permission. Crying, she makes up that the reason is that Yi Chen has another woman and she can't go against her grandfather. The old lady is shocked and calls the young man a monster for cheating on her granddaughter after everything. A cousin then comments that it's no surprise since she never let him touch her in 3 years. The matriarch ignores this and says that even so, he shouldn't have cheated and orders him to be brought in for discipline. Promptly, the woman picks up her phone to call her ex-husband and follow her grandmother's order. Yi Chen's phone starts to ring. It was his ex-wife calling him. The young man answers the call with a cold voice and asks what she wanted this time. The woman says her grandmother wants him to go there, but the protagonist replies that he won't and hangs up. She is outraged by his attitude and can't believe her ex-husband hung up on her. The young woman then informs the matriarch he won't be coming, and the old lady becomes furious with his audacity. At that, the cousin Shaji offers to go get the protagonist, and the grandmother agrees with the idea. Seeing her cousin leaving to get her ex-husband, the woman just watches the scene in silence. The grandmother takes advantage of everyone's attention to make an important announcement to the family. She tells them that the Hoshin group has a new, mysterious chairman whom no one knows. The old lady finishes by saying that the family's future depends on a good relationship with this man. Meanwhile, one of Yi Chen's subordinates questions him about his recent actions. The hero explains that it's his last day as a delivery guy, and that he prefers to observe his enemies from the shadows. Elsewhere, his ex-wife's cousin calls the young man while driving his luxury car. The relative asks where he is, and the protagonist reveals his location to the man. With a malicious smile on his face, the cousin says he's on his way to meet him. A short time later, the man's car nearly runs over Yi Chen, who is on his scooter. The driver then orders the delivery guy to get in the car, because the grandmother wanted to see him. Our hero refuses and warns that the divorce is going to happen even if her grandmother begs. Shaji laughs and says the matriarch wants to punish him, and Yi Chen asks what the reason is. The cousin accuses him of cheating and says that's why he deserves to be punished by the Wang family. Our hero is surprised and asks if his ex-wife really said that he cheated on her. With that, the young man starts to laugh, and the annoyed cousin asks what he's laughing at. With a cold look, the protagonist thinks how Wang Jiao can be so shameless and deceitful. Shaji is startled by the sudden change and feels a powerful presence coming from the delivery guy. The relative then tells him to get in the car and kneel to receive his punishment from the grandmother. Annoyed by the refusal, the cousin gets out of the car and threatens him, saying he's going to give him a beating. Without hesitation, Shaji lunges at our hero and tries to punch him in the face. But Yi Chen dodges easily and uses his scooter's mirror to hit the attacker's face. The blow lands perfectly, and the cousin screams in pain as a trickle of blood runs from his mouth. Furious, Shaji pulls out a knife and says he's going to carry out the family's discipline and finish him. The cousin then tries to stab the young man, but our hero is faster and dodges the attack. With a quick move, he grabs the enemy's wrist and prevents the blade from hitting him. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist lands a powerful punch right on the cousin's face. Lying on the ground, the man hears Yi Chen say that he's no longer the Wang family's dog to obey them. And with a determined look, our hero declares that no one will give him orders anymore. The defeated cousin threatens him as a delivery guy puts on his helmet and prepares to leave. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the Wanha Hotel, the matriarch's birthday party was still going. Mrs. Wang and other relatives were waiting anxiously when someone announced Xiaoji's return. Seeing the car approach, the grandmother praises her grandson's efficiency in carrying out her orders. But to everyone's surprise, the young man gets out of the car all beaten up and calls for his grandmother in despair. Shocked, the grandmother asks who hurt her grandson, and he reveals it was Jiao's useless husband. The young man's father appears furious and shouts that the worthless trash dared to hurt his son. With his face all swollen, the relative then asks the grandmother if they should call the authorities. The matriarch refuses because it would be a disgrace and says she will handle it as a family matter. She then tells her son to use his contacts to teach the young man a lesson and bring him back. Half an hour later, Yi Chen is surrounded by 2 huge men in a dark hallway. The brutes introduce themselves and tell the protagonist to come with them without asking any questions. The young man deduces they were sent by the Wang family and refuses, as it's his last day of work. With that, the goons get angry and charge at him with the intention of hurting his hands. Soon after, only sounds of a scuffle and screams of pain echo through the silent hallway. Moments later, our hero appears calm and relieved that his work wasn't affected. But one of the goons gets up behind him with eyes red with anger, ready to attack. The man attempts a surprise attack from behind, but the protagonist dodges with a quick move. Without a worry, he even checks if his food delivery is still intact. Saying there's only one delivery left, the young man gets on his scooter and leaves, leaving the goon behind. Back at the luxurious Wanha Hotel, the Wang family's party continued in full swing. Zhiqiang tells his mother that the men he hired were all defeated by the former son-in-law. The matriarch is shocked and wonders if that useless man really knows how to fight. Just then, a man announces the arrival of the regional agent of Tuanchuan Delivery to congratulate her. Sheiji's father realizes that's the young man's boss and whispers a new idea to his mother. The boss, named Ma Kun, arrives bringing an expensive bottle of wine as a gift for the birthday lady. Mrs. Wang thanks him but notices he's not in a good mood and asks why. The cousin's father then takes the opportunity to whisper in his ear about Yi Chen. Ma Kun is shocked to learn that the son-in-law not only cheated on her granddaughter but also hurt her grandson. The man laments that he can't help, but Zhiqiang says he is the perfect person for the job. It's then revealed that the young man works as a delivery driver for his company, Tuanchuan Delivery. With a malicious smile, the boss tells them not to worry and that he will handle the matter himself. He then takes out his phone and tells an employee to create a fake order for the Wanha Hotel. 15 minutes later, our protagonist arrives on his scooter to make his last delivery of the day. He calls Mr. Ma, telling him the order is at the hotel entrance, and asks him to come get it. On the other end of the line, the boss ignores him and tells the delivery guy to bring the package inside the hall. The young man explains that entry is not allowed and that the customer needs to come to the door. Ma-kun then looks at the matriarch, who with a gesture approves for him to continue with the plan. In a threatening way, the man tells our hero to wait for him right there at the hotel entrance. Upon hanging up, Yi-chen finally understands that this is all a big trap. Just then, the boss and the entire Wang family walk together towards the exit to meet him. Upon arriving, Ma-kun points and tells the protagonist to take off his uniform and hand over his badge. Not understanding, our hero frowns and asks what is happening. The cousin then reveals that this man is his highest level boss in the company. Ma-kun threatens him, saying he can call the manager who hired him if he doesn't believe it. The protagonist's phone rings, and his manager informs him that President May has just fired him. The young man is furious because he wanted to end his last day well, but that man ruined everything. With little choice, the delivery guy starts to take off his uniform jacket as the boss ordered. The ex-wife's father and cousin mock him, telling him to take it all off like a little dog. With that, our hero asks the boss if his agency contract doesn't expire this year. Ma-kun is speechless and wonders how a simple delivery guy could know that information. With a smirk, Yi-chen informs him that he will no longer be the agent for the delivery company. The man gets angry and shouts that he is very close to the big boss of Tuanchuan and won't be fired. Then the Wang family's grandmother enters the discussion and yells for the former son-in-law to kneel on the floor. She accuses him of cheating on her granddaughter and hitting her grandson, promising to punish him in front of all the guests. The protagonist smiles and asks why he should kneel for that old lady. The matriarch then remembers the promise he made to accept the family's punishment if he did something wrong. Our hero confirms that his word still stands and that he is not a man to go back on it. Satisfied, the cousin's father orders them to bring the Wang family's dragon ruler for the punishment. Next, a heavy golden object in the shape of a dragon is brought into the hall. The guests whisper that being hit with that must hurt for days and could ruin one's face. Without hesitation, the man orders them to give the young man 20 slaps to the face with that metal object. Jiao's father offers to discipline the son-in-law personally for having failed in his duty. But suddenly, a female voice interrupts everyone and says to leave the matter to her. It was Wang Jiao herself who takes the ruler and says that since he is her husband, she will hit him herself. With an ironic smile, our hero says that first she cheated on him, then she accused him, and now she wants to hit him. The woman looks away, and he scoffs, saying he married a rare and unique wife. She then reaffirms that he is her husband, and that if anyone is going to hit him, it will be her. But her cousin takes the object back and yells at the protagonist, calling him a scoundrel. With that, Shaji lunges at the young man and tries to hit his face with the golden ruler. Our hero is faster and with an agile move, takes the object from his attacker's hand. Without a second thought, Yi-chen uses the ruler to deliver a strong blow to the cousin's face. All the guests are shocked to see the worthless son-in-law hit the family's legitimate grandson. Furious, the matriarch yells at him for making a scene and threatens to call the authorities to take him away. The young man turns to the crowd and says he was only defending himself because Sheiji attacked him first. One of the guests then reminds him that he had agreed to accept the family's punishment. The protagonist agrees but says he would only accept the punishment if he had actually done something wrong. The grandmother then repeats the accusations of cheating on her granddaughter and assaulting her grandson. With that, Yi-chen reveals that she was the one who cheated with Fang Qiao at the Jiawa Hotel, and that there are records. The guests start to gossip and comment on the lack of purity of the famous beauty of Yunqing. Desperate, the young woman claims she met with a rich man to discuss business and financing. The young man then questions her if talking business requires a hotel room and a bathrobe. Suddenly, one of the guests announces the arrival of young Master Fang right in the middle of the commotion. Jiao's lover enters the hall holding a gift and asks what's going on. The woman runs to him and asks him to confirm that their meeting was just for business. The rich man hugs the woman, lies, saying she only went to bring him a document at the hotel. With that, Fang Qiao challenges our hero to present any proof, like videos or photos of the affair. He then invents that the real reason is that Yi-chen was the delivery guy for his food order. The man continues, saying the young man had a horrible attitude, and that's why he received a negative review. To prove his point, he asks Ma-kun to check the delivery records from the previous night. The boss then takes out his phone and confirms the story, showing the one-star review to everyone. The guests begin to judge the protagonist for being so low as to get revenge over a review. Calmly, our hero faces his ex-wife and asks if she's not going to explain the real reason. The young woman coldly replies that he wasn't focused on his work and doesn't know how to handle pressure. The young man starts to laugh in disappointment and wonders why he still expected anything from a woman like her. He then turns to the matriarch and challenges her to present any proof of his supposed affair. Mrs. Wang is speechless and doesn't know what to say, while the granddaughter looks away. Without proof, the grandmother ignores the accusations but says she won't forgive the assault on her grandson. Our hero defends himself, saying that Shiji attacked him with a knife and that there are cameras to prove it. Annoyed, the old woman accuses him of growing a backbone after living off the family for 3 years. Yi-chen states that he has always been respectful and promises not to look for trouble if the cousin leaves him alone. With a serious look, the young man makes his only request, which is to finally get a divorce from Jiao. Laughing with rage, the matriarch says the marriage was a wish of her late husband, and she has always honored it. As she speaks, the party guests begin to whisper among themselves about the family drama. The old lady finishes by bragging about her granddaughter's beauty and saying she is out of the young man's league. Furious, the matriarch declares that she will no longer follow her husband's wish and expels Yi-chen from the family. To celebrate, Jaya's father asks the waiter to bring drinks for all the party guests. With that, the guests start congratulating the grandmother and granddaughter for finally getting rid of that trash. The young woman's mother takes the opportunity to reveal that for 3 years, they slept separately and never even held hands. She shouts to everyone that her daughter is still pure, leaving the girl completely embarrassed. With a smirk, our protagonist just watches all the public and unnecessary humiliation. He then understands that his ex-wife will be treated like a product and sold to the highest bidder. Our hero approaches and congratulates her for finally being able to find a man at her family's level. The young woman says that if he kneels and begs, she might convince her grandmother not to divorce him yet. The young man questions if she really wants him to kneel after she betrayed him in such a way. Saying she is not worthy, he pours the glass of red wine over his ex-wife's head. Shocked, the woman screams that the despicable man has gone mad and is rebelling against them. The grandmother is stunned by the former son-in-law's action, while the granddaughter continues to scream in rage. The cousin then complains to the grandmother that just a divorce is too little, and the old lady agrees with her grandson. The matriarch says the young man wasted her granddaughter's youth and hit her grandson, so he can't get away unpunished. And with that, she asks for help from all the important guests to end the former son-in-law's livelihood. The guests gossip about the family's plan but wonder if they should really get involved. Fang Chao then announces that he supports the family and guarantees that no hotel in the city will accept the young man. The rich man thinks that besides getting his woman, he will also make the protagonist crawl and beg. Soon after, the owner of a restaurant chain also offers to ruin our hero's life. The delivery boss, Ma also joins the boycott and guarantees that Yi Chen will never work in delivery again. The CEO of a karaoke chain joins them, and our hero asks if anyone else wants to speak. The man repeats the threat, and the protagonist just laughs and asks if any other sector will speak up. At this, the cousin remembers that the young man is a good fighter and suggests someone block his path as a bodyguard. The guests comment that it's impossible to know all the rich people in the city to prevent that from happening. Suddenly, someone laughs at the situation, and everyone's attention turns to a mysterious woman in the hall. Sitting on a sofa, a beautiful woman in a red suit catches everyone's eye, and no one knows when she arrived. Shaji's father recognizes her as President Kyun and apologizes for not having greeted her earlier. Another guest is charmed by the young woman, asks the man to introduce him to that beautiful woman. The man thinks how low-class Ma-kun is for not recognizing her and reveals that she is from the Huaxing group. The woman is introduced as Kyun Hongyan, the famous and powerful vice president of the large company. As the chairman is a mysterious figure, she's the one who holds all the power and has closed billion-dollar deals. Our protagonist recognizes her and thinks in surprise that she is the vice president of his own company. Jiao's father begins to flatter her, saying that she is the only one who knows all the rich people in the city. The other guest agrees and says that with her beauty, all the rich men in the city want to know her. The woman jokes that they make it sound like she gets involved with all the rich men, and the man apologizes. The guest then thinks that a beautiful woman like her wouldn't become a vice president without using some tricks. With that, the man asks her to help them finish off the young man in exchange for the 70 million financing. With a cold look and without saying a word, the president calmly takes a cigarette from her purse. Seeing this, several rich men rush to light her cigarette with their expensive lighters. At this, several rich and powerful men rush to light her cigarette with their luxury lighters. But the woman ignores all of them and, with a seductive look, calls our hero over to her. The young man asks what for and thinks how interesting the vice president he's never seen before is. With a smirk, the president then asks the protagonist to light the cigarette for her. The guests are shocked and wonder what's so special about that trash for her. Not caring about the others, Yi Chen coldly replies that he doesn't have a lighter with him. The flatterers are outraged that he publicly refused the goddess of Yunqing's rich men. Hearing that, the woman stands up and, with the click of her heels, walks towards the young man. She then asks his name and the protagonist plays dumb, asking which name. The president specifies that she wants his name, and the young man scoffs because they've already said it's Yi Chen. One of the men yells at him not to be disrespectful, but the woman gestures for him to be quiet. She approaches and says that since he has the same last name as the new chairman, she will give him a chance. Whispering in his ear, the woman compliments him and offers him a job as her personal bodyguard. The female guests gossip and wonder why she is protecting him, and if she likes the young man. The ex-wife watches the scene from a distance and doesn't understand what the powerful woman wants with Yi Chen. One of the men takes the opportunity and asks for the new chairman's full name, since he is also a Ye. The president replies that the boss doesn't want people to know about him, and even she doesn't know his full name. With that, our hero realizes that she doesn't know who he is and asks what way out she is proposing. She says that if he kneels and apologizes one by one to the Wang family, she will forgive him. And after that, she will hire him as a bodyguard with an annual salary of 200,000. The ex-wife complains to her grandmother, saying the president is clearly going against them on purpose. The matriarch then understands that the woman plays at a high level, which is why she became a vice president so young. With that, the old lady realizes that she offends no one and can make any man fall for her. But to everyone's surprise, our protagonist simply refuses the powerful woman's offer. His ex-wife is completely shocked and speechless at the audacity of the man who was once her husband. The president herself can't believe what she heard and yells for the former son-in-law to repeat what he just said. With a serious look and without hesitation, our hero prepares to answer the woman in front of everyone. He leans close to her ear and firmly repeats that he refuses the humiliating proposal she made. The sudden touch leaves the powerful woman completely flustered and embarrassed by the situation. One of the men yells at him and the young man defends himself, saying he only got closer so she could hear better. Furious, the woman thinks that this son In-law doesn't know it's good for him and that he has a lot of nerve. Then she turns to the matriarch and announces that she will support the family in ending Yi Chen's life. The guests celebrate, and his ex-wife says that now he has no way to survive in the city. The young man questions if the decision is hers or the Huaxing group's, and she confirms that she represents both. Our hero then reminds her that she is just the vice president and doesn't have the right to speak for the entire company. The guests whisper that he is right and that she shouldn't speak on behalf of the mysterious chairman. Annoyed, the woman decides to reveal the truth and says that the new chairman Yi is actually her lover. Our protagonist is in shock and wonders at what point he became that woman's lover. He then questions if she isn't ashamed to say that in front of him, and she reaffirms the lie. The guests understand that only a chairman would be at her level and that they make a perfect couple. Sheiji's father celebrates and says that now that they know about the romance, the financing deal is guaranteed. The president then asks everyone to keep it a secret, as her boyfriend keeps his personal and professional lives separate. Our protagonist laughs and thinks how the woman boasts and then makes up an excuse so her lie isn't discovered. Annoyed by the young man's mockery, the powerful woman turns to him and asks what he is laughing at. Yi Chen says he heard the chairman is amazing and that she isn't pretty enough for him. Flustered, she claims they admire each other very much and that he rented an island to ask her out. Tired of so many lies, our hero thinks it's not worth wasting time arguing with a liar. So he turns to his ex-wife and calls for them to go finalize the divorce, and she agrees. The cousin interrupts them and tells the young man to stay and eat before being kicked out of the city forever. One of the men compliments the cousin and compares the scene of him pulling the young man's clothes to walking a dog. With a cold look, our hero thinks that the delivery boss Makun needs to be punished appropriately. With that, he takes out his phone and calls one of his men, asking for the name of the CEO of Chuanchuan Delivery. The protagonist then orders him to contact the man and revoke the Yunqing agency. Everyone in the hall is shocked and confused to see the former son-in-law making that call. On the other end of the line, his subordinate confirms and informs him that the man has a net worth of 50 billion. The young man then agrees to meet the CEO another day and asks his employee to arrange everything. With the order given and the plan in motion, our protagonist calmly hangs up his phone. An awkward silence falls over the hall as everyone stares at the young man with his phone in his hand. The cousin starts to laugh and asks who he's pretending to be to revoke an agency qualification. Makun also scoffs and tells the young man to pick the right time to brag, as he's not scaring anyone. Jayo's father calls him disgusting and says his grandfather is just a farmer and he's living in a fantasy. With a serious expression and without saying a word, President Kyun just watches the whole commotion. Just then, Makun's phone rings and he happily answers, seeing that it's President Wu to renew the contract. But on the other end of the line, the man informs him that his agency qualification has been officially revoked. In shock at the news, the delivery boss turns pale and can't believe what he just heard. He then looks at the president and the guests, thinking that he can't let anyone find out the truth. Desperate, Makun pretends everything is fine and talks about the renewal fee, but is told there will be no more agents. The president ignores him and says not to worry, they'll have a drink together when they meet. Confused, the man says their cooperation will be pleasant, and the president calls him crazy. After hanging up, the boss despairs and wonders if Butler Fang hasn't told the president yet. The cousin then approaches and asks if the renewal went well, and Makun lies, saying it went very well. Shaji proposes a toast to wealth, and the man downs the glass at once with tears in his eyes. Our hero notices the crying while the cousin praises the man's courage for drinking it all at once. President Kyun then asks why he is crying, and he lies that the drink burned his throat. The protagonist challenges him to stop pretending and tell everyone the truth about his revoked agency. Furious, the man shouts that even if it's true, it wasn't because of a worthless piece of trash like him. With a smirk, our hero says he doesn't want to make another enemy and calmly drinks his tea. Shaji's father yells at him, while the guests wonder if the young man really did that. Scared, they start to think about the consequences if it's all true, and the president hears everything. Jiao's mother then assures everyone that her useless son-in-law is from the countryside and doesn't know anyone important. A guest agrees, saying that if he were powerful, he wouldn't have put up with being a dog for 3 years. The grandmother and other relatives then agree that it's all ridiculous and makes no sense. With that, the security guards start to escort Makun out, who complains because he brought an expensive bottle of wine as a gift. Seeing the scene, our hero understands how materialistic the Wang family is and why his ex-wife cheated on him. A chef then announces that the banquet is about to begin and invites everyone to the dining hall. The ex-wife says they should eat first and get divorced later so as not to spoil the grandmother's party. So he decides to wait for her to finish eating before finally getting the divorce. But a cousin complains that her spoon got dirty from touching the trash's spoon. Our hero looks at her soup and realizes it's a papaya recipe for breast enhancement. He then says she doesn't need to have the soup, and the annoyed relative asks what he meant by that. The young man tells her to forget it and offers the soup, but the young woman complains that he doesn't even look at her properly. The cousin then complains to the grandmother that the young man shouldn't eat because he didn't even bring a birthday gift. The matriarch says they should keep their word, but the granddaughter insists because he didn't even bring a gift. The protagonist thinks that if the old woman hadn't insisted on the marriage, his mission would have failed a long time ago. Since it's his last day there, he decides to call and ask for a gift to be prepared for the birthday lady. His ex-wife overhears the call and scoffs, saying the family won't accept any junk he sends. She adds for him not to embarrass himself, and that he can have someone prepare a real gift. The young man ignores her and asks on the phone if the gift has arrived, leaving the woman furious with his audacity. 10 minutes later, a uniformed delivery man arrives at the entrance of the luxurious hotel where the party was taking place. The security guard stops him from entering, but the man explains that he is only there to deliver a gift. The delivery man asks who the birthday person is, as he had a special delivery to make. The cousin questions him, and the man explains that the owner of a Rolls-Royce paid him to bring the gift. With that, Shaji thinks the gift is for the grandmother and, with a smile, asks the man to give it to him. The relative then opens the box with an air of superiority and wonders what's inside the package. But upon seeing what was inside, his face changes completely, and he is shocked by the gift. It was a transparent ice jade bracelet, and he says it's worth at least 10 million yuan. One of the guests is shocked and wonders who would send such an expensive item through a simple delivery man. Meanwhile, our hero just eats calmly at his table, watching all the commotion from a distance. The other guests comment that it was the most expensive gift they received and ask who sent it. The matriarch of the Wang family is also speechless and says she has no idea who sent it. A cousin then comments that all the important families are there and wonders who could be missing. With a confident smile, the young woman wonders if the gift might be from one of her admirers. The guests agree, as she is beautiful and certainly attracts many rich young masters from the city. Her father then boasts about his daughter's beauty and agrees that some rich young man must have sent the gift. President Kim congratulates the man on his generous future son-in-law who already gives such expensive gifts. Seeing the scene, our hero thinks how they would rather guess it was an admirer than admit it was him. The young man then gets up and asks his ex-wife Jiao if she has finished eating. Since she's finished and the gift has been delivered, he says they can now go finalize the divorce. The woman is confused and asks when he gave a gift, as she didn't see any of that happen. Our protagonist then points to the jade bracelet and says that was the gift he gave. Jiao's father yells at the former son-in-law is shameless, as he could never afford that bracelet. The cousin complains that the useless husband is embarrassing the family and reaffirms that the gift is from an admirer. Annoyed with the situation, the ex-wife says she no longer wants to be married to him and that they should go quickly. Our hero turns to the grandmother and says that for 3 years they were a family and the bracelet is his gift. The matriarch tells him to stop bragging and leave, as he brings shame to the Wang family name. The cousin then threatens him, telling him to crawl out of the city as soon as the divorce is finalized. The young man calmly replies that leaving or not is his decision and that no one will order him around. A short time later, the couple leaves the hotel while a luxury car pulls up right in front of them. The young woman's father scoffs, saying he isn't worthy of riding in a BMW and should take a bicycle. With a malicious smile, he warns that they will be waiting at the gate of the registry office and speeds off. Unfazed, the protagonist just hails a taxi and asks the driver to take him to his destination. In a short time, he arrives at the civil registry office to finally resolve the situation. With the divorce certificate in hand, the young man thinks that after 3 years, he is no longer a live-in son-in-law. The ex-wife mocks him, saying that now he is a discarded son-in-law, which is even more shameful. Our hero just tells her to say what she wants, as he no longer wants anything to do with her family. As he leaves in a taxi, the young woman yells and insults him, calling him useless, worthless trash. She then asks her lover, Fang Cho, to follow the car and see if he's really leaving Yunqing. The rich man agrees and follows the taxi, as he is sure the young man is heading straight for the train station. He explains that since the ex-husband has no way to support himself, he has no choice but to leave. The woman, however, becomes thoughtful and says that his expression makes her feel it's not that simple. While following him, the rich man realizes that this path doesn't lead to the city's train station. The young woman then asks if it's the road to the airport, but the man says it leads to the XX district. With that, the ex-wife wonders if the young man isn't planning to leave Yunqing as promised. The lover reassures her, saying he must be looking for a hotel and guarantees he won't get a room. But to their surprise, the taxi stops in front of the luxurious Four Seasons Sisi Lake Hotel. The rich man gets annoyed and deduces that Yi Chen must be there to apply for a waiter position. The woman complains that he is ignoring the Wang family's influence and not taking the threats seriously. With a malicious smile, the man takes out his phone to call the hotel manager and stop him. On the call, he asks his acquaintance not to hire a young man named Yi Chen who went looking for a job. But the answer he receives leaves him shocked, and the ex-wife asks what went wrong. He explains that the manager said no one came to apply and wonders what the ex-husband is doing there. The rich man then raises the possibility that the protagonist is actually staying at that hotel. The young woman finds it impossible because she took all his money, and one night their costs at least 8,000. Not understanding anything, the man decides it's best to ask the manager directly. In the hotel lobby, the manager confirms that Yi Chen checked in and paid for 7 nights. The couple is shocked to learn that the total cost of the stay exceeds 50,000. The lover calculates the amount and asks the ex-wife if the young man didn't have some secret money saved up. Just then, a receptionist reveals that he didn't book a regular room, but the presidential suite. They are speechless to learn that the suite costs 80,000 a night, totaling 560,000. With a mocking look, the rich man asks if she's sure he got the money from household expenses. The ex-wife is stunned while the lover questions if she is sure about his money. The rich man then yells at the receptionist, who confirms the value of 560,000. The employee also reveals that the young man gave a 10,000 yuan tip, which shocks the young woman. Annoyed, the woman yells at the employee, saying the tip belongs to the Wang family and not her. The lover ignores this and asks where the money came from, and the ex-wife says it's impossible for it to be from expenses. Then she remembers that he took care of the grandmother's dog and suggests he stole antiques from the house. The rich man agrees with the theory and tells the woman to call her family, check if anything is missing. Meanwhile, back at the Wanhao Hotel, the Wang family matriarch's birthday party was still going. The guests whisper among themselves and wonder who the mysterious person who gave the gift could be. President Qin also wonders about the daughter's absence, as it has been a while. She thinks that even with the bad traffic, the mysterious person should have arrived at the party by now. With that, the woman starts to wonder if the gift wasn't actually sent by the former son-in-law. Just then, Jaya's mother's phone rings, and she answers when she sees it's her daughter calling. On the phone, the young woman tells her mother to rush to the grandmother's house to see if any antiques are missing. The mother is shocked to hear her daughter accuse the ex-husband of stealing the family's heirlooms. Overhearing the conversation, President Kyun lights a cigarette and thinks with relief that he is just a thief. With her business settled, the woman gets up and says goodbye to the matriarch as she needs to leave. Shaeji's father then takes the opportunity to remind her about the financing matter, and she reassures him. Seeing that the mysterious donor isn't going to show up, the other guests also start to leave. The grandmother then asks the mother why her granddaughter only discovered the theft after the divorce. The mother explains that her granddaughter suspects theft because the husband spent $600,000 on a suit. Furious with the young man's audacity, the matriarch of the Wong family screams her former son-in-law's name. She then orders some relatives to go to her house to search while others wait for the donor. A short time later, a luxury car arrives at the huge and remote Sishian mansion of the family. Inside, the cousin suggests they split up to search for the stolen items more quickly. 20 minutes pass, and upon searching one of the rooms, the young man realizes that nothing was missing. The uncle also confirms that he didn't find anything of value missing, which proves the ex-son-in-law's innocence. This meant that our protagonist had stolen absolutely nothing from the Wong family. But Shaji lies to his uncle and says he needs to check again to be sure nothing is missing. With a malicious smile on his face, the cousin prepares to put his evil plan into action. He takes a 5 million watch and decides that from that moment on, Ye Chen would be the thief. The relative then screams desperately to his uncle, saying that a very expensive watch is missing from the room. Shocked, they finally understand how the young man got the money to pay for the presidential suit. The uncle then calls his mother and tells her that his late father's very expensive watch has been stolen. The matriarch screams in the phone and orders them to bring the young man back so she can punish him. The man then tells Shaji that the grandmother wants them to capture the ex-son-in-law and bring him to her. Afraid of getting beaten up again, the cousin complains that his injury still hurts a lot from the fight. He then makes up that he needs to go to the hospital and flees, leaving his uncle behind alone. With no other option, the uncle calls his niece to see if she is still at the Shizzy Lake Hotel. The scene then takes us back to the entrance of the luxurious hotel where it all began. The young woman then receives a call and learns that her grandmother's 5 million watch is missing. With that, her lover questions her, and she thinks furiously that her ex-husband robbed her family. She then goes to the hotel reception and asks for her ex-husband's room number. With a determined look, the woman says she is going to drag the young man back for stealing the watch. Her lover notices her reaction and wonders why she seems so excited to see her ex-husband. The rich man holds her back and tells her not to make a scene and just call the police to solve the problem. Annoyed with his attitude, the woman calls him a coward and says she will handle it herself. She then goes to the door of the presidential suite and starts yelling for the thief to open the door. Inside, our hero is taking a shower and wonders why the woman haunts him like a ghost. With little choice, he opens the room door wearing only a towel and faces the woman. Upon seeing her ex-husband's physique, the young woman is completely flushed and speechless at the sight. She thinks in surprise that Yi Chen has a six-pack, and he coldly asks what she wants with him. The woman thinks she should have made him walk around shirtless at home, and accuses him of stealing the watch. He plays dumb, and the ex-wife shouts that the grandmother lost a watch and it could only have been him. She points to the room and says that would be the only way for him to pay for such a luxurious suit. The young man thinks how incredible her family is, says he never took a penny and asks her to leave. The young woman is in shock as he rarely called her Miss Wong and feels the distance between them. Just then, she remembers when he treated her with affection and called her wife and goddess. Back in the present, she angrily asks if he has another woman in his room, and that's why he wants her to leave. The protagonist calls her crazy and says they are already divorced and threatens to call hotel security. Furious, the young woman takes out her phone and says she was going to give him a chance, but now she'll call the police. She then threatens him, saying that stealing 5 million could get him at least 15 years in prison. The woman then shouts that if he kneels and apologizes now, she might reconsider. Our hero thinks about why liking someone has to be so pathetic and closes the room door. With the door shut in her face, the ex-wife furiously screams for him to open it immediately. She then shouts that she has already called the police and that he can wait to go to jail soon. Meanwhile, at the mansion, the grandmother is shocked to learn that her granddaughter called the authorities. Her mother says that Wong family matters should be resolved by them and not by strangers. The matriarch then says that maybe he is destined to rot in prison for staining their name. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrive and ask for Miss Wong, who made the report. The lover lies, saying the ex-son-in-law stole a watch to pay for the suit and women. The officer then tells the receptionist to call the room and ask the suspect to come down. Seeing that he doesn't answer, the woman says he must be scared and feeling guilty. With that, the officers decide to go up to the room with her to check the situation up close. Upon arriving at the suite, one of the officers knocks, and the young man, now wearing a robe, opens the door. The police chief introduces himself and asks about the theft, and our hero denies taking anything. The officer then comments on his poor past and how he received nothing in the divorce. With that, the officer questions him about where all the money came from to pay for that luxurious suit. With a calm look, the protagonist asks for a moment and turns to get something from inside the room. He then picks up a document from the table and prepares to show the truth to everyone. Calmly, he shows the stock transfer agreement and reveals himself as the new CEO of the Huaxing Group. He then hands his expensive diamond-studded business card to the shocked police officer. The younger officer then whispers to the chief if such a luxurious card couldn't be fake. With that, the chief asks if they can find his information in an official database. The young man explains that he asked a colleague to hide his data, but that he can release it for a while. Then he calls a friend and asks for his profile to be visible for just 10 minutes in the system. A minute later, our hero informs the officers that the search can now be done as they requested. The younger officer takes out his phone and searches for the Hoshin group to verify the story. On the device's screen, Yi Chen's photo appears with the title of CEO of the large tech company. Shocked, the police officers wonder if this couldn't be the work of some professional hacker. Seeing their suspicion, the protagonist says he didn't want to brag but has no other choice. With that, he shows them his bank account information to prove he is telling the truth. The officers are speechless when they see a balance of over 10 billion yuan in his account. Our hero explains that the money on one of his cards is already worth more than the entire Wang family. He then questions them if, with all that money, he would really need to steal a simple watch. The police chief then asks why such a rich young master would marry into the Wang family. The young man explains it was an arranged marriage and asks them to keep his secret and identity. The officers find it all very strange but promise to protect the privacy of young Master Ye. With everything resolved, they apologize for the trouble and say goodbye to our protagonist. 2 minutes later in the lobby, the officer informs the ex-wife that Yi Chen did not take the watch. The ex-wife refuses to believe it and shouts that if he didn't steal it, where did the money for the hotel come from? She calls him a broke delivery guy, and the officers wonder if a broke person can have 10 billion in the bank. The chief then warns that without concrete evidence like videos or photos, they cannot take the young man in. The officer scolds her for insulting her ex-husband, but she defends herself, saying she wouldn't have divorced him if he were capable. The younger officer is shocked, and the woman asks if her ex-husband now regrets the separation. The officer thinks that she should be the one to regret it, having thrown away a billionaire CEO husband. Changing the subject, the young woman then asks if there was any other woman in her ex-husband's room. The police chief confirms that Mr. Yi was completely alone in his quarters. With a convinced smile, the woman thinks that this means he still loves her and is suffering for her. The lover watches the police leave and wonders why they became so polite with the young man. Just then, her phone rings and it's her cousin calling to see if the police had already taken the ex-son-in-law. The young woman then explains to him that the authorities said there is no evidence, and that's why they didn't take him in. On the other end of the line, the cousin asks what kind of evidence they need to finally frame him. With a malicious smile, the relative reveals that he has the watch, which is why there's no proof of theft. So he decides he will forge proof of sale to ensure his enemy goes to prison. The woman hangs up the call and becomes thoughtful about the situation and her cousin Xiaoji's plan. She worries about the possibility of him going to jail and remembers when he used to take care of her. Her lover notices she's distant and just watches her in silence, not understanding her thoughts. The rich man then hugs her and suggests they also spend the night at that luxurious hotel. Furious with the proposal, the woman pushes him away and insults him for not being able to handle Yi Chen. She thinks angrily that Yi Chen ruined her night and promises she won't leave him alone. Just then, a hotel employee compliments the woman's beauty to the rich man, who gets embarrassed. Annoyed by the comment, the man grabs the employee and tells him to let him know when Yi Chen leaves. The next morning around 6 o'clock, our protagonist gets ready for a new day of work. At the reception, the hotel staff are surprised to see the young man leaving his room. In an elegant suit, his CEO aura dominates the environment and a female employee falls for him. Right after, the employee takes out his phone and informs Mr. Cho that Yi Chen has just left. One of the rich man's goons then follows our hero's taxi and reports that he is heading downtown. 20 minutes later, the young man arrives in front of the huge Huashan Group building for work. He thinks about what President Kyun said and wonders what her attitude will be when she sees him there today. At the same time, in his room, his ex-wife's lover wonders what Yi Chen is doing in that place. He remembers the president's threat and thinks the young man went to get revenge on her for the humiliation. With a malicious smile, he sees an opportunity to get closer to the woman and please her. Just then, the powerful president's phone starts to ring, and she answers the call without much enthusiasm. On the other end of the line, the man introduces himself, and the woman recognizes him from the birthday banquet. He then warns her that the Wang family's former son-in-law has gone to her company to get revenge. The woman tells him not to worry, as the building has security and he won't be able to get in. But the rich man reveals that the young man has an access card and has already passed security without any problems. Shocked by the news, the president is confused about how he got her company's card. The man then invents that he used the money from the stolen watch to buy access from someone. The rich man flatters the president on the phone, saying she is beautiful and that he is worried about her. The woman thanks him for the reminder and says she will send someone immediately to check the office. The lover offers to go help her too, but the president hangs up on him without a second thought. She then calls her secretary and tells the young woman to go to the office to see if there is anyone suspicious. About half an hour later, the scene takes us to the front of the large Huashan Group building. At the reception, the security guards say good morning to Secretary Zhou, who is arriving for work. The woman named Zhou Rongrong was actually the personal secretary of the powerful President Chun. The guards comment that she is very beautiful, but that she can't compare to the boss's charm. Upon entering the room, the secretary is startled to see a man there and asks how he got in. Our hero stares back at her with a cold, calm voice, asks who she is and what she's doing there. The young woman then formally introduces herself as Zhou Rongrong, the president's personal secretary. The young man starts to wonder why a woman like Kyun would hire such a beautiful secretary. He then thinks that maybe the president likes women and is interrupted by the confused secretary. Without wasting time, our hero reveals himself as Ye Chen, the new chairman of the Huaxin group. The secretary is completely shocked and speechless upon discovering the truth about the young man. She apologizes desperately and explains that her boss warned her about a suspicious person on the premises. The protagonist understands that the Wang family followed him and tells the employee to get back to her work. He then says he heard the vice president is beautiful and that he wants to see her as soon as she arrives. In the restroom, the secretary calls the president to inform her about the situation at the company. The woman is shocked to learn that Chairman Yi is in the office and wants to see her now. Without hesitation, the president says she is on her way to the office to meet the new boss. With that, the woman speeds her red sports car through the city streets at high speed. 10 minutes later, the woman arrives in the building's lobby and is greeted by a familiar voice. It was her secretary, who greets her as soon as she sees her entering through the door of the large building. The boss asks where the chairman is, and the employee says he is waiting for her in his office. On the way, she notices that many female employees have arrived earlier and wonders why. The secretary explains that the new CEO is super handsome, which is why they all rush to see him. With an air of curiosity and mockery, the powerful woman then asks how handsome he really is. The young woman sighs and says he is more handsome than celebrities and must be around 23 years old. Kyun Hongyin is surprised by his age and thinks she became a vice president at 32, which is already rare. She then scolds the young women and tells them to act professionally so as not to embarrass her. The secretary said a CEO like him could only be a perfect match for President Kyun. The young woman continues, saying he complimented her and that maybe he came early just to see her sooner. With a smile, the woman boasts that there has never been a man she couldn't control. The other female employees agree and say there is nothing the president can't handle. In a flashback, we see a rich and powerful man cleaning her shoes like a little dog. Confidently, the boss replies her red lipstick while the others admire her and want to learn. She then says she will leave the door open so that everyone can see how she tames the young man. Excited, the women ask her to make him kneel and put on her shoes as always. She thinks that humiliating the chairman will show everyone who really runs the company. With that, the woman thinks her position in the company will become even stronger and tells him to come in. She formally introduces herself and thinks that even from the back, he looks as handsome as a Korean star. The woman feels a strange sense of daeja upon seeing him and asks why the new boss wanted to meet her so badly. The protagonist then puts the paper on the table and slowly turns to finally face her. The female employees at the door gossip and bet that the young man will kneel and call her queen. But to her surprise, the man reveals himself as Ye Chen, and the woman is stunned to see him there. Completely shocked and with her legs shaking, the vice president falls to her knees on the office floor. The young women at the door are confused as to why the powerful president is kneeling before the new boss. The office door was open, and everyone passing by could see the unbelievable scene. The secretary thinks in shock that it wasn't the chairman who knelt, but her own boss. With a cold and superior look, our hero just stares at the woman kneeling before him on the floor. Just then, the female employees scream and flee upon realizing they were caught spying on the whole scene. Meanwhile, the woman remained there on the floor, not knowing what to do or how to react. He then asks why she is kneeling, and the young woman blames the Wang family for offending her boss. With her head down, the woman apologizes and asks for forgiveness for everything she said the day before at the party. The young man then approaches and with a gentle touch, lifts the woman's face so he can look at her. He reminds her that yesterday she told everyone they were lovers and asks if she remembers. Our hero pulls her onto his lap and asks about the island she said he rented to ask her out. Completely embarrassed and not knowing what to say, the woman just apologizes again. Seeing her state, the protagonist smiles and with a calm voice, tells her to get up from his lap. The protagonist then tells the woman to close the blinds, as the scene wouldn't look good to the employees. He reminds her that yesterday she wanted to end his options, but now he is the chairman and her boss. With a challenging look and a smirk, the new CEO asks how she plans to block him now. The vice president admits her mistake and says she never imagined he would be the Wang family's live-in son-in-law. She even offers to be fired on the spot and promises to disappear so as not to bother him anymore. Our hero thinks that she is not a simple woman, as she doesn't panic and takes responsibility. With that, the young man surprises her and tells the woman that he is actually not planning to fire her. He explains that despite the humiliation, she was the only person who offered him a way out at the party. Emotional and with tears in her eyes, the woman thanks him and promises to dedicate herself completely to serving him. The young man says he can forgive her, but he won't spare any of the others who try to ruin him. He then calls her by her first name and asks her to organize the information of all his enemies. Promptly, the employee agrees and thinks that the business world of Yunqing is about to be shaken. Half an hour later, the woman returns to the office and gives her boss all the information he asked for. Our hero reads the file and remembers how his ex-wife boasted about her lover's $10 billion family. The vice president explains that they once had 10 billion, but now their assets are worth only 3. She also talks about the Wang family's project and says she will cancel everything so they can't dream anymore. But the protagonist says business is business and asks her to bring him the project proposal. The woman says she will get the file right away, but the young man surprises her and says he will go with her. At the same time, outside the building, the rich man wonders if the president has already captured Ye Chen. Just then, a female employee approaches and recognizes him as young Master Fang, but he doesn't know who she is. The employee reminds him of a night they spent together at a bar to see if he recognizes her. The rich man thinks he must have been very drunk to take a woman like her home, but realizes something. Seeing that the young woman could be useful, he hugs her, and she asks him to take her upstairs because Kyun is in danger. A minute later, the lover and the employee get out of the elevator and arrive on the executive floor. Just then, the man overhears two female employees gossiping about the president kneeling before the new boss. He then approaches the president's secretary and asks where her boss is at that moment. Completely ignoring the young woman's question, the man walks past her and heads towards the boss's office. Without a second thought, the ex-wife's lover opens the office door with great force. He finds our hero and the vice president inside and calls him a shameless, thieving son-in-law. The president then asks who let the rich man in, and he accuses the young man of being there for revenge. With a smile, he tells the woman not to be afraid, because he will personally throw that trash out. But to the man's surprise, President Chun gives a hard slap right across the intruder's face. Furious, she yells at the man and asks who he thinks he is to call her so intimately. The rich man doesn't understand her reaction and wonders why no one seems surprised by the young man's presence. He then thinks the young man isn't there for revenge but to be her bodyguard. The lover remembers the gossip and deduces that it was Yi Chen who knelt to beg for the job. Mockingly, he says the young man woke up early to get ready and crawl to be her little dog. The rich man says she can't accept and reminds her of her promise to end his options. The secretary overhears the conversation and is shocked to learn that her boss actually threatened the chairman. Annoyed, the woman slaps the man's face again and yells, denying she ever said that. With that, the boss tells her secretary to throw the man out and fire the employee who brought him. The rich man is then thrown out by security and complains about being humiliated in front of the ex-son-in-law. He then threatens our hero and promises to have him sent to jail and live on the streets forever. Furious, the ex-wife's lover walks towards his car to get out of that place as quickly as possible. Inside the vehicle, the man curses the president and says she only got to the top because of her face. He then promises that one day he will get revenge and make her kneel and beg for his forgiveness. With a smile on his face, the man decides he needs to tell the Wong family about the young man's new job. An hour later at the Shishin mansion, a voice asks in shock what the young master had just said. The rich man then tells the matriarchs that the ex-son-in-law became President Chun's personal bodyguard. The ex-wife and her relatives are shocked by the news and can't believe it's possible. The lover also invents that he heard from employees that Yi Chen knelt and begged for the job. He then deduces that the woman had her eye on the young man since the party, and that's why she felt sorry for him. Furious with the story, the ex-wife shouts that her ex-husband knelt for another woman and not for her. She remembers that in 3 years of marriage, he never once knelt for her. A cousin then scoffs and says the young woman doesn't have enough charm to make a man kneel. The relative continues and boasts that if she were married to him, she would make him wash her feet every day. The ex-wife says she was too good for him, and that if she had another chance, she would make him kneel all the time. Angrily, she complains to her grandmother and says the president broke her word and that they must get revenge. But suddenly, a sharp slap hits the young woman's face, leaving her stunned by her grandmother's action. The matriarch then yells at her granddaughter and reminds her of the 70 million deal that is in the woman's hands. Jiao's father says she is jealous of President Kun because the other woman is more capable than she is. With that, the young woman shouts that since the family won't help, she will go to the Huaxing group herself to sort it out. Seeing the commotion, the matriarch then tells her son to call Qin Hongyan and settle the matter. On the phone, the old lady says that if she had known the woman had her eye on Yi Chen, she would have handed him over sooner. She then accuses her of going back on her word and demands an explanation for her actions. On the other end, the president apologizes and thinks that if the old woman knew the truth, she would have a heart attack. The matriarch then offers the young man as a gift since he is just alive and son-in-law to them. Not caring about the ex-son-in-law, the old lady asks about the 70 million financing deal. The woman replies that the chairman found the project interesting, but wants to know more before proceeding. Happy, the grandmother says her son will meet him personally, and the president agrees to set a time. The old lady then warns her son to make a good impression on the chairman and not to mess things up. He asks if they are going to forget the theft now that the young man is President Chun's man. The matriarch tells him to keep looking, as the proof will be useful to punish him or to negotiate with the woman. Just then, cousin Shaji arrives and tells his grandmother that he found out the young man sold the watch to a gangster. With a smile, the old lady says that Yi Chen is just the president's dog and that she won't do anything. She then turns to the rest of the family and complains that the old are useless and the young are incompetent. Furious, the grandmother yells at her granddaughter for not being able to hold on to a husband and for wasting a pretty face. Humiliated and with tears in her eyes, the young woman runs out while her mother asks where she is going. Inside her luxury car, she promises that she will teach her ex-husband a lesson for embarrassing her. A short time later, the woman arrives in the underground parking garage of the Huaxing Group building. From inside the car, the ex-wife is startled to see a woman with purple hair approaching. To her surprise, she sees Yi Chen and Qin Hongyan walking together through the building's parking lot. Angrily, the woman thinks how the scoundrel dresses so well after the divorce and even laughs with another woman. Without a second thought, the young woman gets out of the car and shouts that he is shameless for becoming the president's dog. The company's boss then recognizes her and wonders what the arrogant princess of the Wang family is doing there. The ex-wife accuses him of kneeling for the other woman and asks why he didn't do the same for her. She adds that she gave him many chances and that if he had begged, he would still be the family's son-in-law. Annoyed, the young man questions if she still has the nerve to ask why he didn't kneel. He then reminds her that she cheated on him with Fang Chao in a hotel and still wanted him to ask for forgiveness. The woman says she gave him another chance at the birthday party and that he could have stayed if he had knelt. She continues and shouts that kneeling is the same thing and asks why he did it for another and not for her. The protagonist says that kneeling for one's wife is not shameful, but kneeling for a cheater is. The young woman blames him for getting out of control and says she should have made him wash her feet from the beginning. But suddenly a hand appears out of nowhere and delivers a sharp slap across the enraged woman's face. It was the president, who yells at her for cheating first and still not feeling a bit of shame. Shocked by the assault, the ex-wife asks how the other woman dares to hit her, and the woman just stares at her. With tears in her eyes, the young woman accuses the president of stealing her man, and on top of that, hitting her. Seeing the commotion, our hero approaches the boss and asks her to just let it go. With a cold look, the young man turns to his ex-wife and informs her that he is no longer her man. The young woman then shouts that even a dog raised for 3 years wouldn't be given away and orders him to leave. The ex-wife offers him $500,000, thinking the president pays $200,000 a year. The president laughs at the offer and says that even if she added another zero, it wouldn't be enough. The young woman is shocked, thinking the salary is $5 million, but the couple ignores her and leaves. She then grabs him and threatens him, saying her cousin found proof of the sale of the stolen watch. With that, the woman invites him to be her personal bodyguard and promises to save him from prison. Our protagonist thanks her for the offer but refuses the proposal to become her bodyguard. He then says he can't protect her while watching her have fun with other men in hotels. Inside the car, the young man says that if her cousin really has proof, he can go ahead and sue him. As he speeds away, the young woman runs after the car and shouts for him not to leave her. Furious, she thinks he is a scoundrel for being the other woman's lover and wonders what is wrong with her. The scene takes us to 7th Street in Yunqing, a famous slum where the poor and the powerful live. There in the underworld, everyone knows a man named Brother Melon who decides the chaos of the city. Just then, the ex-wife's cousin arrives at the location and calls for the famous and feared Brother Melon. The tattooed man with a ponytail then greets young Master Wong on his unexpected visit. The relative says he is there to make a deal with the gangster while holding a black box. He opens the package and reveals a $5 million watch that he wants to sell for $4.5 million. The young man then asks the man to say that a guy named Yi Chen sold him the watch. With a smile, the gangster realizes that this was the man who had hit the young master before. The cousin confirms and says he can't swallow the humiliation and wants to send the young man to prison. The man refuses the offer because his boss told him not to get involved in family matters. The cousin shouts that Yi Chen is already divorced and questions who this boss Liu is for him to obey. With that, one of the goons gets angry and reveals that the man is actually Brother Melon's boss. The gangster explains that this boss is his guiding light and that his words are like decrees to him. Desperate, the relative offers the watch for $4 million to close the deal no matter what. But the man repeats that the boss treats him like a son, and that's why he always needs to listen to him. The cousin then lowers the offer to $3 million and says he can easily make a $2 million profit. Just then, the gangster remembers that the boss also said to never turn his back on money and accepts the job. Meanwhile, back in the car, our protagonist drives alongside the company's president. He then informs the woman that without his permission, she can no longer touch Wang Jiao. The young man explains that hating is the other side of loving, and for him, hating her is the same as loving her. The boss is impressed with the young master's perspective and how advanced his thinking is. He is handsome and rich with a free mindset and also shows himself to be generous and caring towards women. With that, the woman thinks that since the ex-wife doesn't value him, she will claim him for herself. They then arrive at Jinj Temple, where the Wang family plans to build a luxury residence. The president describes the place with its gardens, a maple forest, and a natural hot spring. She then questions him if he is really going to give the money to the family after everything they've done. Our hero surprises her and reveals that this project was actually his original idea. He explains that with the death of the ex-wife's grandfather, the mediocre relatives fought over the inheritance. So the young man created the project to control the high-level families and build his power there. He shared the idea with his ex-wife, who told her grandmother, and she gave the project to the uncle. The president explains that the Wang family prefers sons, which is why the ex-wife cannot inherit the business. Our hero agrees and says she has always been pressured, and the arranged marriage only made things worse. With that, the young man says that despite all this, nothing justifies the betrayal she committed against him. At that moment, an autumn leaf falls into the woman's hair, and he gently removes it. With the leaf in his hand, the young master invites his vice president to have a drink with him. Elsewhere in the city, at a bar, someone was shouting that they really wanted a drink. It was the ex-wife who was at a bar with a friend and was calling for her to drink with her. The friend, named Song Hongi, asks why she is drinking during the day and who made her so angry. The young woman then complains that the disgusting Kyun Hongyan slapped her just for insulting her ex-husband. Crying with rage, the woman wonders what the real relationship between those two is in the end. Her companion says the ex-husband is now the president's little dog, and that's why she defended him. The ex-wife defends herself, saying she only cheated once and that every beautiful woman does it nowadays. Hearing her friend, the young woman spits out her drink and shouts that she has actually cheated on him twice. The woman gets annoyed and says her husband at least never caught her in the act and that he should just put up with it quietly. She then complains that he refused to kneel for her, but did it for the president, and that she can pay too. The friend says she knows him well, and that he loved her very much for 3 years to fall for someone else so easily. Confused by the theory, the ex-wife doesn't understand what her friend means by that story. The young woman explains that he wants to become worthy of her so he can propose to her again in the future. Upon hearing that, the woman is shocked, and with her eyes shining, she finally understands everything. With a convinced smile on her face, the ex-wife seems to agree with her friend's new theory. With a convinced smile, the woman mutters that her foolish ex-husband still truly loves her. The friend then suggests she marry the rich man, but the other complains that he doesn't take care of her like Yi Chen. With a drunken look, she says her ex-husband made her unhappy, and that's why he deserves to suffer a little. The friend then asks why the young man who is alive and husband started making deliveries 6 months ago. Sleepy, the young woman explains that 6 months ago the family traveled, and he needed money because she got sick. Suddenly, the woman's phone rings, and her friend informs her that it's her cousin Xiaoji calling. On the phone, the cousin calls her to the grandmother's house because he found proof of the watch sale. Meanwhile, Yichen's phone also rings, and he sees it's a call from Wang Xiaoji. The relative then orders our hero to go to the grandmother's house because he found proof of the crime. The protagonist refuses as he is busy, but the cousin provokes him, saying the witness has already arrived. The young master thinks he never sold a watch and decides to go and settle this once and for all. He then hangs up and calls his secretary Joe, asking if the employee knows how to drive a car. With confirmation, he tells the secretary to pick him up to take him to the famous Shishan mansion. On the way, the secretary drives the luxury car at high speed through the streets of Yunqing City. Inside the vehicle, our hero thinks about how complicated his feelings are about returning to the Shishan mansion. About half an hour later, they finally arrive at the gate of the huge and luxurious Wang family mansion. The secretary then gets out of the car in her elegant outfit and gets ready to open the door for her boss. The grandmother and another relative are surprised to see the young woman and wonder where the family's former son-in-law is. With that, the employee opens the door and tells President Yi that they have finally reached their destination. Our protagonist then gets out of the vehicle and asks the secretary to wait for him outside. His ex-wife and the matriarch are shocked to see that the secretary has become his private driver. The cousin then starts laughing and says the guy is just putting on a show to impress the family. The cousin's mother agrees with her son and says it's hilarious to see the former son-in-law's whole act. He then asks him how much he paid the secretary to pretend to be his private driver in front of them. Another cousin calls him President Chun's lapdog, and the young man thinks about how nasty and mean his relatives are. Just then, his ex-wife Wang Jiao appears with a smug smile on her face, watching the whole scene. She then thinks her friend was right and that he's doing all of this just to impress her. Not caring, our hero tells his cousin to stop stalling and bring out the so-called witness to the incident. With that, the protagonist follows his relative inside the mansion and walks down a long red hallway. At the door to the room, 2 men with baseball bats were waiting for them with very menacing looks. The young man wonders what thugs are doing there, and one of them greets him, calling him Brother Ye Chen. Our hero doesn't recognize him, and the man says he sold him a watch for 5 million yuan. The cousin then taunts him, saying he's afraid to admit he sold the watch to the thug. Our hero smiles and says the witness suits the cousin's style, while Shaji yells that he's the one who took it. The matriarch then accuses him of taking from the family and still having the nerve to argue with him about it. Calmly, the young man turns to the old woman and says he only came there to make it clear that he didn't take the watch. The grandmother then shows the object and says it's a limited and exclusive edition, so it can't be a mistake. The thug then accuses him of selling the item to pay for his presidential suite at the luxury hotel. With that, he questions him about the hotel money, and the cousin thinks the former son-in-law has no way to defend himself. Our hero then says he wanted to interact with them like a normal person but only got mocked in return. So, the young man decides to lay his cards on the table and reveals to everyone that he is the president of the Hoshin group. And with a serious look, he asks if the fact that he's a billionaire isn't reason enough for them. Hearing that, all the relatives and guests in the hall start laughing in our protagonist's face. The cousin scoffs and compares him to a movie character for bragging about being the richest man in the city. A female cousin offers to be his second wife if he really is the president of the big group. The thug then tells him to stop pretending and get on his knees for the grandmother and the cousin to apologize. His ex-wife says that because he was her husband for 3 years, the family won't send him away. She adds that he can pay the money back later, but needs to get on his knees and admit his mistake. Our hero replies that he did nothing wrong, and even if he had, the Wang family isn't worthy of him. Furious, the cousin's mother yells to call the authorities and send the former son-in-law away for 10 years. The thug gets worried because if the authorities get involved, the secret of their setup could be exposed. So he yells that the guy will get on his knees one way or another and tells his men to hold him tightly. With that, the 2 henchmen grab him by the arms and order our hero to get on his knees on the floor now. With a cold look, our hero repeats that they are not worthy of make him get on his knees. Then he easily breaks free and lands a powerful elbow strike on one of the henchmen, who cries out in pain. Next, the young man lands a clean punch right in the face of the other man who was holding him. The leader of the thugs is surprised by his strength and orders all his men to go after him at once. But suddenly, a little white dog appears, barking, and the men are startled by the animal's appearance. It was Huahua, the grandmother's dog, who gets in front of Yi Chen to protect him from the thugs. Our hero then picks up the little dog and says he took care of it for years, and the animal is worried about him. With that, he thinks that even a dog knows who treats it well, which is more than he can say for certain people there.